Awesome. All righty. Well, welcome everyone. So, where we're going to kick off today is on page 15. And we're at the second full paragraph, we commenced. And just to contextualize where we're at in Bill's story quickly, what's happened up until this point is Bill Wilson. He's got symptoms of alcoholism, but he does not know what it means to be an alcoholic. And Bill Wilson goes to the town's hospital and he learns that he's got an allergy of the body and he's got an obsession of the mind. And he gets out of the hospital and he drinks again. And then what happens is he goes back to the hospital and he learns that he's going to die of this illness. He learns that it is a hopeless condition. He learns that, man, he's not going to survive. And on page 8, he has what I like to call a step one experience, where he sees the reality of his predicament. He sees his hopelessness. And then his old drinking buddy, Ebby Thatcher, shows up and he carries with him message of what our solution is, a spiritual awakening, and how we access that solution, which it wasn't the 12 steps at that time. And we see Bill Wilson wrestle with the idea of the second step. We see him push and pull and fight. And we see Bill Wilson take what essentially later became our second step, the idea that there could be a power greater than himself, and that power could bring about an entire psychic change. We then saw Bill Wilson take the actions that later became the 12 steps. And last week, we dove into Bill Wilson's spiritual awakening. And where we're picking up on page 15, we commenced, is as Bill Wilson is talking about his experience carrying this message to others. So over to Terry to kick us off with that first paragraph.
Thanks, Paige. We are on page 15. We commenced to make many fast friends, and a fellowship is grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part. Now I talked last week that Bill goes through the three sides of the triangle in his story. And if you want what Bill has, you do what Bill did. And Bill, we talked the last two paragraphs with the service portion of the triangle. And then the one prior to that was on page 13, which was the recovery portion of the triangle. This is the third part of it, which is the unity portion of our triangle. Now, he's going to describe we made many fast friends. I mean, I just found out I'm friends with Paul's mom on Facebook. That's funny. But I mean, look at all the friends that I got here right now. I mean, I have friends all over the world, and it's a what does it say? It is a wonderful thing to feel a part. I feel a part of when I come to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Drug Addict Anonymous, whatever anonymous program fits your tune. But I I feel normal here. It's weird. It's like when I'm outside of here, it's just kind of it's a little odd talking to people. I just feel a little uncomfortable. But when I'm here, I feel a part of. I'm with my peeps. I'm with my tribe. I'm with my herd. I'm with fellow travelers. I'm with my boy Howard Eber. They right there. Howard E. right there. That's my boy. I have twins. I actually have twins and all these Hollywood squares all over the world that I never knew existed, but there you are in the flesh. And it's a wonderful thing to feel a part of. I'm not apart from you guys, I'm a part of. And it's wonderful. I mean, I can't really explain it. This is the fellowship, and the fellowship is extremely strong. It is powerful. But I said this before, I can't be doing 1/3 of the program. I need all three sides of the triangle, right? So we're going to go into more, I guess, promises of the fellowship, and here are a few. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. Shit, you guys know what happened to me a couple of months ago. The fellowship carried my ass through that process. It was a moment of tragic, a moment of grief. And I had joy during that because I was able to get on the phone with a few you cats and just start laughing about fun escapades and fun stuff that we all did. I can't really describe it. It's just you guys put joy in my heart, and I appreciate and I love you. You know, I've seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. Shit, I mean, you get to, I mean, in our 10th step, it says to watch for the manifestations of ourself, right? Selfishness, dishonesty, fear, all that stuff. But in the 12th step, we get to watch God work on people. I get to watch God perform miracles on people and their families. I get to see them become a part of their family again and become a vital part of their family. I mean, my wife, what'd she say? She said to me, was it 3 months ago or something like that? We had a conversation. She just looked at me, just dead in my eyes, just said, I can't do this without you. Something I forgot exactly what she said. And I'm like, where'd that come from? She's like, "I I need you in my life." You know, like that would have never been a conversation that came up 5 years ago, you know, like she had a restraining order on my ass 6 years ago, you know, like, but now I'm needed in my family. Like we have a very difficult situation at home. Like we do this as a unit, my wife and I, and my son. You know, like we get through. My life has been recreated and restored to become a vital part of my family. I mean, I've been noticing my 12 step has been way more directed and more heavy. I'm sorry, more dominant. Yeah, heavy. Let's say more heavy towards demonstrating these steps and these principles at home. That's what's been going on with my life currently, you know? And in the beginning of recovery, it was all about, you know, helping another alcoholic, this and that, getting many people I could read the book out loud to. It has changed, it's transformed, it's more balanced. But now my life has taken a different turn because there's difficulty. It says pressure and difficulty is going to come up within the family. And my life, God has recreated my life and put me in a position to be useful at home. And that's where I'm needed right now. That's where God's calling me right now. You know, and I don't know where I went with that, but all right. Where was I going? I don't know what I get kind of excited what I have to hear sometimes, you know. I get excited what I'm about to say. Because I don't know what the hell I'm gonna talk about. What does it say? Where is it? Where was I? I've seen the most impossible domestic situations righted. Shit, I mean, look at my own experience. I was going through a divorce with my wife, and we're back together. Feuds of bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men and women come out of rehab or asylums or, you know, loony bins, loony commissions, and resume a vital place. There's that word vital, necessary for life, a vital place in their lives for their families and communities. I've seen business and professional men and women have regained their standing, right? There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. In one Western city, Akron, not talking about Hawaii. Sorry, guys. Sorry, my Hawaiians out there. Where was that? Environs there are 1,000 of us and our families. We meet frequently. So these are instructions for this is an instruction for me. This is why I go to meetings. We meet frequently together so that the newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. I mean, I just came from my home group right now, and you're gonna notice in the beginning of recovery that let's go to 1,000 meetings. You get kind of enthused by going to meetings, you feel better and all that stuff. And all of a sudden that ship kind of sails, you know, like I start going to meetings and I'm not really feeling better, right? Because there was a selfish motive. I'm going to meetings to feel better personally, me thinking about myself. Now I go to meetings to how can I be helpful and useful to you? Right? Like I keep going to my home group and Tony keeps asking me to speak every single time. I try hiding from him, but then he sticks me in there to speak. And then this new guy came in and he was there. He was there. He was getting kind of like chewed up a little bit from other people because he thought that he could do the program by himself. And I'm listening, I'm observing, and whatever it is, because I'm going to approach them. That's the deal. I don't know. Howard knows how many times it says approach in the big book. It says it 30 plus times, right, Howard? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Maybe, I don't know, give me a wave. And it says approach a lot in our book. That means I'm supposed to approach them when they got terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair on their face. I'm supposed to go to them and be a demonstration of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I'm gonna call this guy later on tonight, probably around 9:30, because he went to the next meeting after that because he thinks that don't drink, go to meetings is a solution. I'm gonna maybe show him another way out. Yeah,
It
we'll see
is
what
30.
happens.
Terry, it
30.
is 30.
It's 30. Well, look at
30.
that. Huh? 30 times it says to approach an individual. So if you've had an awakening, if you've been enlightened or you've been wakened up or whatever it is, you have a responsibility to go out to a meeting, not to help yourself, but to go out and to go be useful and be helpful to someone who is still suffering. Right? That is the name of the game. Our fifth tradition doesn't say where we're supposed to hang out, or what does it say? Stay sober and help the newcomer. No, it doesn't say the newcomer. It says to the still suffering alcoholic or addict or whatever the hell you are. Right? We're supposed to go help someone because there's someone hurting right now. But in my mind, I need a meeting to feel better because I didn't make any money today. I need a meeting because my wife yelled at me. I need a meeting because I'm in a resentment. I need a meeting. That's BS. I'm being selfish. Right, Andy, we're on page, now we're on page, what page are we on? 16. Okay, I'll go back to the book. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We are growing in numbers and power. Now look at us now. I mean, look, this is one of the very few studies that I've done, Paige, where we see an increase of people that come here. You know, I do a lot of workshops. I used to do a lot a long time ago. I used to do a lot, and it would be great because when we get to the fourth step and we have little people in there, it gets this. There's a shrinking effect that happens when we get to later parts in the big book, especially how it works, especially when we get to the ninth step, scary old ninth step. All right. You start to see shrinking, and this is one of we're growing in numbers and power here, Paige. You know, and we're just messengers. You know, we're just conduits. We're just agents. We've been empowered by a chief authority, by a power greater than ourselves to carry a message which we learned through knowledge, through studying, or whatever it is. We have knowledge, we have information. And what's the most selfish thing we could do, me and Paige, is to hold it and keep it all to ourselves. Like that, what is that? That gauntlet, right? That gauntlet prospector, that damn gauntlet prospect. Yeah. I gotta give it away. And when I give it away, I get inspired, you know. And what happens with, I said this earlier, I think last week, that yeah, in the beginning I stayed here because of the gift of desperation, but that kind of faded a little bit, you know, like this good ass whooping that I had 6 years ago kind of faded. I kind of forget about that. I get more pumped up. I get more energized. I feel more momentum when I am reading the big book out loud to another person or to a group, or I'm just bullshitting in the fellowship about something about God. Man, I just will randomly talk. I see people talking like, "Hey, we talking about God right now." You know, like I get inspired by that stuff because you are my peeps. I feel comfortable here. All right, Paige, I'm talking way too long. You gotta just mute me sometimes. I could keep going. Pew pew pew.
Absolutely not. Pew pew pew. I'll let you go. First and foremost, it's important that I say I too am also Facebook friends with Paul's mom, and that is the best. So if you actually the takeaway from this big book study is that if you are not Facebook friends with Paul's mom, that is the whole other leg of the triangle is Facebook friends with Paul's mom. So we're all going to be friends with her on Facebook after the meeting. And I promise you, this is a nightmare that's dressed up like a daydream for poor Paul.
Paige, can you put her name in the chat so everybody can find
Absolutely.
it?
I'll just link her profile directly. Paul's like, no, no. It's just, he's having flashback. It's awful. And also, I love what you were saying. And by the way, lovely woman. Paul's mom, oh, she's the best. Like Paul, oh, sorry. Yeah, like Paul. Like Paul's mom. Yeah. And the other thing that Terry was talking about was the importance of like when we go to meetings, the thrust of what we're trying to do is to give. And I've been on this kick lately where I love taking those slogans, those slogans that we hear in the rooms that don't actually necessarily have anything to do with recovery. Those slogans that we hear in the rooms that don't actually work. Things like, just keep the plug in the jug, right? And if you're here hanging out with Terry and I on a Friday night, I assure you, you do not have the ability to keep the plug in the jug. Because if you had the ability to keep the plug in the jug, I don't know what you'd be doing on a Friday night, but probably not hanging out with us. Maybe trying to be Facebook friends with Paul's mom, but not spending time with us. And the reason I point that out is this idea that, like, man, when we talk about, oh, keep the plug in the jug, keep the plug in the jug, as in just don't take that first drink or just don't pick up. And that is not something I'm capable of doing. But I start to find something here. I start to find the magic that Terry's talking about. My spirit begins to be awakened. And don't I want to, well, and to be honest, if I'm finding what we find here, I can't help but give it away. Do you know what I mean? I can't help but want to share it with others. And that's another way that I cannot keep the plug in the jug. Like, keep the plug in the jug. I can't do that with my spirituality either. I can't do it with the solution that I found. The thrust of how I live my life must be focused on what I can give. And we kicked off that paragraph with that we commenced to make many fast friends, and a fellowship has grown up among us. And that fellowship that grows up among us, it is not the fellowship of just going to meetings. It is the fellowship of the Spirit. It is the fellowship that happens when I sit down with another alcoholic or another addict or another whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study. And we sit down virtually, screen to screen, eyeball to eyeball, knee to knee, however we're doing it. And we have this experience and we go through this work together, shoulder to shoulder. That is the fellowship that's growing, carrying this message. And it goes, when it talks about the joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty, as Terry was talking, that is a promise. And sometimes, again, those slogans, those saying we hear in the rooms, life on life's terms. Now, I have done Steel on Steel off and on for a number of years, and there's a question in Steel on Steel. And it is, are you living life on your terms? Are you living life on life's terms? Or are you living life on God's terms? And that is the joy of living, even under pressure and difficulty. Not life on life's terms, even under pressure and difficulty. A joy when life is hitting and life is painful, and when it's not going the way we think it should, and it is real tragedy and real pain and real suffering, there is still a joy. That's what's on offer. Not don't drink, go to meetings, because we can't do that. You know what I mean? There's no power there. And when it says, I've seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere, I want to point out that in those early days, it wasn't just the alcoholic that got well. Their families also would often commence this way of life. Now, if you're listening to me and you're now wanting to go march into your spouse's room and be like, hey, you got to write inventory. No. That's not how this works. We're not doing that. My mom doesn't have Facebook. So you can't be friends with my mom. Somebody wanted to be friends with my mom on Facebook. She's not on Facebook, but you can be friends with my mom anyways. I'll give you her email. We'll just be friends with everybody's mom. It's a promise. It's in the book. It's not. It's absolutely not. Well, the family recovered too. You know what I mean? The family would recover too. And they would take this course of action. But if we're tempted to march into the room or, march into everyone's mom that we want to be friends with and be like, hey, mom, you got to work these steps. What I need to remind myself is that my responsibility is to be a demonstration of this power. And if they're not interested in writing inventory, is it perhaps because I have not demonstrated the power of inventory? Have I not demonstrated the power of amends? Have I not demonstrated the power of God in my life and the power of selfless service? And again, more promises where these impossible situations get righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts, and lives get radically transformed. like 180-degree changes that happen and can happen very quickly. But I want to point out they do not happen in the order that I think we all think they happen. I come to rooms like this and I think what I need to do is fix, manage, and control my life. And I really got to get a job, and I really got to get a relationship, and I really got to get a six pack, and I really got to get all these things, and I got to fix, manage, and control, and then I'll stay sober. But it is radically the opposite. I work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And then the rest will follow suit. The rest will follow suit. That's the order. And when it says there is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us, that is a line that I believe is to be prophetic. To what I mean by that is to be more true as time goes on. Do you know what I'm saying? So it may be when this book was published in 1939 and we got like 80 sober middle-aged white dudes, they might have just by chance have had some trouble and misery or we might have had some but like in 2025 with the depth and the breadth of experience of a worldwide fellowship, and this is an all-inclusive study, so worldwide fellowships, that line has become more true. And we know, well, good for Paul. Now he's just getting called out with what he's doing. By the way, I will throw out, I don't care if you're multitasking this big book study. It's amazing if you're taking notes. It's amazing if you're highlighting. It's amazing if you're paying attention. I genuinely do not care if you're, painting the house or doing your dishes, or if you're having a bath or shower, camera off please, or if you're watching women's wrestling, I do not mind. Howard, make sure you tell us who wins. Alrighty. But that is a line that has become more and more true as time has gone on. And and I love that. Like, what do I bring to meetings when I'm having a hard day? Like, there is this principle that we see, and it's like really broken down, and like we dive into it. We really, really dive into it in the chapter working with others. I love the banter that's happening. So we dive into it in the chapter working with others. Oh, welcome. We're on page 16. Yeah, if you just joined and you're like, why are they talking about women's wrestling? What's happening? I'm so sorry. We are on page 16, top of page 16. So glad you're here. But it's this idea of like, what is important is what I bring. I'm having a hard day, focus on what I can give. And now everyone's going to turn to women's wrestling. That's what's happening. It's going to be a different channel depending where you are in the world. It's a worldwide fellowship. But when I don't feel like I have love, or I feel so insecure, or I feel like everyone hates me, that's when I need to go bring love and security. When I give that which I feel I do not have. That's what we do at meetings. When I focus on what I can get, man, the world shows up from a place of scarcity. When I am showing up to a meeting, I hope they like me. I hope they think well of me. I hope they think I'm a good, sober person. I hope they think I'm whatever. There's never enough. But if I show up and I focus on what I can give, I begin to awaken to the abundance of the power of God. There's more than enough. So if we show up, focus on like, man, I hope there's women's wrestling. There's never enough. But if we focus on the women's wrestling that we can bring into the world. What is happening on this study? Right. Welcome, we're on page 16. And also, this is how you know my sponsees almost never come to my big book studies, most of them. You know what I mean? I'm staying with this sponsee. She's like, what's happening? It's like, she doesn't come every week. And I feel like I went a little long, so I'll give the next paragraph to you, Terry. Pew, pew.
Yeah, we're like, what are we, Tangents Anonymous? We go on tangents here. An alcoholic or an addict in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. Let's finish the page. Yeah. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity. Talking about women's wrestling. But just underneath there, and just underneath that women's wrestling, guys, is deadly earnestness. There is. Faith has to work 24 hours in and through us, or we perish. Most of us feel we need to look no further for utopia. Capital U. That's a capitalized word. I highly recommend that you put that on a piece of paper. You lay aside prejudice and ask yourself, what does utopia mean to you? Remember, we're kind of, yes, you are creating your own concept or you're building your own God, but actually you're not. God is building you when we do this process. So I recommend that you ask that question. What does utopia mean to me? We have utopia, or heaven, or God, with us right here, right now. Each day, my friend, simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men and women. I guess, I mean, I don't know if I said this before here, but I mean, our stories are, they're like fairy tales that come true, you know? I mean, I literally was talking to someone earlier and recommending to her, just keep telling your story. You know, she had a tragedy in her family and she helped someone who had the same exact tragedy. Our first promise of our big book says the story of how many thousands of men and women who have recovered from alcoholism. We're storytellers, right? Keep sharing your story. You never know who you're going to help. Even share the story when you were an unlovely creature. Shit. That's a fun one, right? Because then they have identification. I relate to you, right? They are strenuous, they're comic, they're tragic. I mean, they're adventurous. And then all of a sudden, like, we get transformed here. There's a change that happens in and through us, and then it becomes beautiful, it becomes transcendent. I mean, there's no words that could put into what I'm describing, because it is a life that's indescribably wonderful, right? You know, and you know, one dude committed suicide. I mean, look, the main problem the alcoholic and the addict centers in his mind rather than in his body, right? What's the deal when we stop doing this work, right? Just don't drink. Got that, right? Well, putting the drink down, I heard Mark Houston say this the other day, you know, if just don't drink is our solution, then the big will be 1 page and 3 words, just don't drink. No, no. Why do most people shoot themselves in the head? Because the incessant chatter in our mind, the chatter of 1,000 monkeys, the minion, the liar, the thinker, the lover, the spiritual man, right, Nick? The AA convention speaker. Where's my standing ovation, Howard? Why aren't you standing and clapping for me after I talk? What's up with that? And if he doesn't do that, I'm hurt, threatened, to interfere with. BS. It's because when I listen to that story in my head, the bondage of self, I am so self-consumed and self-absorbed. I'm gonna think, you know what? Drink solution, drink answer. Nah, nah. I've had a thorough step one. I understand that. I'm gonna think suicide solution, suicide answer. That's the deal, man. This stuff is real. You see a lot of people take their own lives in recovery and they go right there, right to the head, right? And why? Because they could not or will or cannot or will not completely give themselves this simple program. Right? Remember you in the beginning of recovery? Yeah, I'm willing to do whatever it takes for victory over alcohol. Yeah. Then when you get to the steps, it's like that song. I do anything for love, but I won't do that. You know, it's compliance versus surrender, right? You know, or see our way of life. You know, like, look, this is a way of living. I mean, my previous life was concrete and pavement. Now it's being useful and giving my time for fun and for free. We're all 50 plus people here. I'm hanging out, reading the big book out loud to 50 people right now on a Friday night at 8:32 p.m. in New York in the parking lot where there's shop right in front of me, right? Like, what's up with that? And I'm having a blast. I'm having a blast because this is my new way of life. I'm a bringer. Take the St. Francis prayer. And I highly recommend you take the St. Francis prayer. Those are instructions on how to live our life, right? A way of life, a design for living, a joy for living, a manner of life, whatever you want to do. Take one of those lines, like, right? I'm a bringer, right? Where there's despair, I may bring hope. Now practice that all throughout the day. Be a hope bringer, be a joy bringer, be a love bringer, right? Bring. Key word in the St. Francis prayer. Try and practice that on a daily basis and watch your life be changed and be recreated. Okay, where was it? There's a vast amount of fun about it, right? You know, a lot of us would be shocked at our seeming worldness and levity, right? I mean, look at us, man. We're laughing about pretty funny stuff on here, right? I feel bad for Paul, man. Paul, I love you, buddy. All right. But yeah, but underneath all that laughter, like there's deadly earnestness, man. Like I'm here fighting for my life, not really fighting for my life, but I'm more here to be inspired. But there's a deadly earnestness under us all, right? Now, this is an instruction for us, and I highly recommend you try practicing this because this ain't easy. Faith doesn't say don't drink. It says faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. Try practicing that. Definition of faith, someone gave this to me, is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. If you got your little paper, or my boy who's driving, you could take some mental notes. Long story short, it's hope with a track record. I'm believing in something I can't see, I can only experience. Right? Faith, putting my will, my life, every aspect of my life. I was just learning about, or listening to last night about a third step. Our third step becomes bigger as the more sobriety that we get under our belt. Like I'm giving so many. It says in the third step, any life, which means any part of my life, my A way of life, my family life, my work life, any part of my life run on self-will could hardly be a success. Now I have to look at every aspect of my life, even the ones that I don't think are objectionable. Now I just listening to yesterday, who's ever paused when agitated? Anyone practice that? Come on, guys. Anyone pause when agitated? What about pausing when doubtful? Anyone do that? I'm putting my hand down for that one. I hardly pause when in doubt. What happens when I'm in doubt? Because I don't have faith, that I don't have trust in a power greater than myself to help me through this particular moment right here, right now. And what I'm going to do is going to rely on the Alpha, the Omega, and the beginning all up here in my head. Very difficult to do. And I started practicing this yesterday because I hardly ever, I think I practiced it maybe one time in the beginning of recovery when it said pause when agitated or doubtful, and I have not done it since. Try practicing pause when in doubt. What happens when I'm in doubt is because I don't trust in power. I don't trust in a power greater than myself. What happens is I become agnostically inclined. I just go right back to my thinking. And what happens when I go back into my thinking, I'm going to believe the story and the narrative in my head. And what happens? I go play God. And what happens when I play God? It just doesn't work. It's fun sometimes, but it doesn't work. I get hurt all the time when I play God. And what happens when I do that so much when I'm so hurt? I'm going to think drink solution, drink ants. And it says, or what? Or I perish. That sounds like a death threat to me. I mean, this book is filled with promises, instructions, and death threats. And here's one of them. Try practicing that and watch your third step become bigger. Watch your life become bigger. Watch your heart grow bigger. Watch you become more open-minded. Watch you start to love people who are unlovable. Watch your life be changed in front of you. And you look back, you're like, God damn, this faith working into my life 24 hours a day actually works. I love this part. It says most of us feel we need to look further for utopia. Howard, correct me. I think it used to say heaven, right? Did it say heaven prior to that? And I think they got shit, or I'm sorry for my language, they got crap for that. And I guess they changed it.
Right. The Catholic Church was they said that you have heaven, you have utopia there. So you had to change that.
Yeah, they were a little testy, right? Man, Go to someone in the cloth and tell them to do exactly what it says on pages 84 and 88.
Actually, it wasn't in the first edition. It was in the original manuscript, but they suggested it be changed because of that reason, so as not to irritate the Catholic Church.
Mm, yeah. Well, we
Not
can irritate.
suggested that.
We want to irritate the Catholic Church. Tell them to do exactly what it says from pages 84 to 88. Right? We do some. You think like I was listening to Mark Houston talk about this yesterday. Steps was it step 4 through 9 that clear the path, and he talks about it like, look, like if you got religious doubt or you got religious issues, lay that aside for now. But and the long story short, we do a lot. We practice spirituality pretty religiously here compared to people who are in actual religions, right? Bring them and ask someone who is in the Catholic Church to do exactly what it says from 84 to 88. Be like, damn, everybody will be enlightened if they did that. All right. All right. Back to this. We have it. We have God with us right here, right now. If you are looking for this power, if you are looking for God, if you are whatever you're trying to do to comprehend or explain this power, just stop. Take a pause because you have it right here, right now. God is within you and every single man, woman, and child. And I like to take that word now all throughout the big book, and I like to practice that. I like to practice the pause now and say, you know what, God, help me with this doubt and let me trust in you, please, because I don't know where I'm going. I feel uncomfortable without you right now, right? Practice this as a way of life here and now, right? I think I'm talking too much. Paige, back to you. Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew. No, you're good. You're good. And yeah, when it says an alcoholic in his cups, that means a drinking alcoholic, a using addict. And whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study, like acting out on that addictive behavior, that when we are doing these things, we are unlovely, a nightmare disguised as a nightmare, as it were. You know what I mean? That idea that, like, yeah, I behave unlovable when I am drinking. I behave in ways that are unlovable when I'm active in using crack cocaine, when I'm popping pills. I am not somebody that is easy to be around. And it's a reminder. And this story is a powerful reminder of this life and death situation that we find ourselves in, and the life and death situation that the people we carry this message to are in. And what's an interesting thing about this, when he talks about the poor chap who committed suicide in his home, he makes it, and I'm going to talk about who this guy is in a bit, but he makes it about him. He makes it about the gentleman, and he makes it about us, as just a heads up for us that this, I mean, what we're working with is fatal, terminal cases. Alcoholics do not survive alcoholism. That is a natural course. To be an alcoholic is to be given a terminal diagnosis. To be an addict is to be given a terminal diagnosis. It is fatal. It is hopeless. Now, because of this book, and more importantly, the power of God that we access through the directions as outlined in this book, miracles happen. A miracle is something that goes against the course of nature, that we stay sober. But it's important to remember we are dealing with a terminal illness. So he is giving us that warning, the heads up, like, hey, man, you're going to work with some people and they might not all make it. And he's making it about the poor gentleman who could not survive. And because I'm a giant nerd and weirdo, I looked into who this guy is. His name is Bill C., also known as William C. Cousins. And he actually came from Canada. He was a lawyer. And he died October 28th of 1936. And you see, William C., Bill C., you got to kind of give the full name because otherwise it's so many Bills. You know what I mean? He lived with Bill and Lois for an entire year. He stayed at their home for an entire year. Now, Bill C., he was also a gambler, and he would spend a lot of time, out and about gambling. And you see, when we talk about emotional sobriety is not like for the nerds, is not for the keeners. Emotional sobriety is for each and every one of us, because as Terry was saying, as Mark Houston was saying, and as our own experience shows, sobriety is not a solution to the illness that brings me here. Because I put down the bottle, I put down the pipe, I put down the pills, we break up with the ex, we put down whatever it is. And what I am left with is a conscious sense of separateness from God. And there is an ache within my soul that nothing can fill. And I'll look for anything to fill that hole. But inevitably, I'm going to get the thought that takes me back again and again to that drink or drug of choice, or as we would say, drink or drug of no choice, again and again and again. Or it gets so awful and so painful, we get the thought to end our lives. And one of the things too is that while he was like living there and he was gambling, he was stealing from Bill and Lois. He was stealing $700 worth of clothes, worth of luggage, and they walked in to find him like having, and I won't talk about how he did it, but they walked in to find him no longer with us. And what's powerful about, people that are giant nerds like me going in and finding and sharing with you all this information is because what is my natural proclivity? My natural proclivity is when bad things happen to me, y'all need to know about it and how it affects me. And I would tell you my tale of woe of like, I lived with this guy for a year. And do you know what he was doing the whole time? And do you know what I mean? And Bill Wilson is not making it about Bill Wilson. He's making it about the gentleman that could not grasp this way of life. And I want to point out, way of life. This is not a set it and forget it deal. The 12 steps are how we live our lives. And he wanted to make it about us, to prepare us for the harsh reality that is sometimes working with others. And I love, that vast amount of fun about it all. Man, we are called to be demonstrations. And you guys know what it's like to sit in a meeting, whether it's a Zoom meeting or like an in-person meeting with that old timer who is just, if you want what I have, you're gonna do what I've done. And it's like, oh no, thank you. Oh no, thank you, sir. I do not want, no. Nobody smoke near that guy because he is dry, like I am called to be a demonstration, and a demonstration of this power is joy, is laughter, is love, is that lightness, that ability. We're on a Mark Houston kick to wear the world as a loose garment. See, I don't know about you, I was so tightly wound in the bondage of self when I got here. But to be able to wear the world as a loose garment, to not take myself so seriously, you know what I mean? And when it talks about, that shocked by our seeming worldliness and levity, that ability to laugh and joke about women's wrestling and poor Paul being friends with Paul's mom, and like to be able to laugh and not take ourselves so seriously, but also to be a part of the world. I had a sponsor who said, Paige, you could be a nun. And I am like, yeah, actually, because I probably would like to go have a little bit of quiet time in a mountain somewhere. And I was like, hey, I could get some more relationship harms. You don't know. Choosing not to, right? But we're a part of the world. We live normal lives. But yeah, there is a devoutness to this way of life. The more disciplined I am, the more freer I become. And that's not simply my experience. I think that's many of our experiences. The more complacent I become, man, I don't got that freedom. I get that bondage of self. And again, underneath is deadly earnestness. That earnestness is that sincerity, that like, I'm doing this thing because I got to do this thing. And I love, as Terry was talking about, faith has to work. Faith has to work. Faith without works is dead. That is a theme that we see throughout this book. Faith as in belief. We can belief dialed up or whatever, but faith as in belief without action gets me drunk. Faith without action gets me high. Faith without action gets me suicidal. And so faith has to work. It is faith and it is action. And it has to work 24 hours a day in and through us. And as you were talking about the St. Francis prayer, I mean, that for me is what we're here to do. The 12 steps, 4 through 9, is clearing the channel between me and God through this power. Just clear that away. And like when I asked to be a joy bringer, bring joy, bring love, bring forgiveness, to be a channel of this peace, a channel of this way of life, it is not my love. It is not my forgiveness. It is not my peace. It is not my understanding that I am bringing. It is God's. And I had a sponsee one time who let off some of the work, and she was getting a little cranky, little touchy, was not having a good day. And she's like, why, Paige, why is it always like God and God's love? Why can't it be my love? And why isn't my love enough? And she didn't hear it in her tone. So I gently pointed out, like your family, certain members of her family I mentioned, like, you really love them, right? And you can really love them. And she's like, yeah. And then I mentioned some people that she was friends with and close with at some of the meetings. And she's like, yeah. And then I mentioned some people that were a little bit difficult at the meetings. And then she got really annoyed at me. I was like, ooh, she did not appreciate that. You see, my patience, tolerance, kindliness, my love, my understanding, my joy is a finite resource. But I'm here to tap into and to build a relationship with infinite power that flows through me. And in where I live in the world, we have 3 topic discussion meetings where people will bring up topics and just talk about them. And then I will sometimes show up at those. Not a joy bringer, maybe a disturber of some sort of, a chaos bringer. And they'll be like, any topics from the floor? And I will be like, faith has to work 24 hours a day in Intercessory Parish. I'll bring that up as a topic. A lot of fun of meetings. But that's this thing. It is not a stagnant faith. It is not a stagnant belief. It is an active, moving, experiential thing that I'm after. Just like it was when I was drinking and using. It wasn't an idea of alcohol. It wasn't an idea of crack. It wasn't an idea of pills. It wasn't an idea of the relationship. It was the experience. And as what's been saying, that they had it as heaven, and any word that pointed to heaven was changed in the original manuscript so as not to offend anyone, not to step on anyone's toes. But what's interesting about that is here's my experience with heaven, and more importantly, here is my experience with hell. And I'm not talking about this in a super theological sort of way. So if what I'm saying goes against any faith, like, I'm just talking about this silly little crackhead. But here's my experience. Where is hell? Well, my experience is that hell was in the here and now. Life as I had been living it, and that hell would extend to the future that I was worrying about, and that hell would extend to the past that I was replaying over and over and over. And see, I don't know about you, hell was here and now. And where do we find heaven? Where do we find utopia? We find it here and now. Where is God? As Thierry was saying, here and now. And I talk about the spiritual malady, not limited to alcoholics, not limited to addicts, not diagnostic of this illness, but that is what we are pointedly treating with these 12 steps to bring about a spiritual awakening. That spiritual malady is a conscious sense of separateness from God. It is not conscious separation from God, because I cannot be separate from God. Where is God here and now? And I love the idea of God as a present tense verb. God here, God now, and God moving. Not as an idea, but as an action, as an experience, here and now. And now this last line, when it says, each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself. That for me has become a benchmark line. Is my sobriety multiplying? And I can hold that up to my experience. And if you're here today and you're finding that, no, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't mean to, my sobriety isn't, I'm working with people and it's not sticking. Like, I'm not here to call anyone out or make anyone feel bad. But what that means is we just got to pivot and try something new. Do you know what I mean? Another thing, another topic that I brought up in a 3-topic discussion meeting. Again, it landed like a lead balloon. It was not popular, but it was the topic of how has our sponsorship style changed over the years? Because I do not sponsor. Well, actually, I don't sponsor how I first started sponsoring, but also I do not. I have never been sponsored in the way in which I sponsor. Nobody has ever taken. I meet people where they're at, and so I take people through different ways. But I have never had a sponsee or a sponsor that took me through the book line by line. I've never had a sponsor sit with me and give me any real guidance other than this is how you make an amends. Okay, go do it. And some of you guys know, ooh, I'm a handhold. I'm gonna drag you through that step work, like, and it's okay. It's okay for it to grow and to change, and it's meant to, because I stopped doing the things that I have found to be not effective, and I start doing things that I find to be more and more effective. And from doing my best and being imperfect and making mistakes and doing it wrong and learning, what grows is this widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. And yeah, over to you, Terry, if you want to kick us off. And there is a solution. Pew pew.
Pew, pew. Yeah, I got a couple minutes and then I got to run. So we got There Is a Solution, Chapter 2. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were just as hopeless as Bill. That's a statement. Turn to a question. How do I know if I'm just as hopeless as Bill? Well, read pages 1 through 8. Ask yourself, did I think like Bill, drink like Bill, and feel like Bill? And ask myself, was alcohol my master? Was cocaine my master? Was this my master? Then I was just as hopeless as Bill. I love this. This is a powerful promise. Nearly all, I guess nearly all is above 50%, right? I guess that's close to it, right? Have recovered. There's that witchcrafty word, right? It says, I think Howard put it 35 times they mentioned the word recovered. They have solved the drink problem. First time I opened up this page, I was in rehab and I was 5 days in and trying to leave rehab, and I stayed because I got honest. The first time I opened up the big book, this was the page that I opened up to. And I just was crying, like bawling out, crying, because I didn't know there was a solution. I just thought going to meetings was a solution. I thought calling thousands of people was a solution. I thought locking myself up was a solution. I went crazy. And then I opened up the book and it says, there's a solution. We have a way out. We have a way up and we have a way out. And I challenge everyone here, and we'll meet next week. And there's a common solution that we all have, that we join together. I want you to write down what our common solution is. And you most likely, all of us will have different interpretations of it, because I hear it from the grapevines. Like if I go to Howard, I'm like, hey, the common solution is a spiritual experience. And then Howard tells Alika, and then Alika tells Judy, and Judy tells Kathy, and then Paul, and then Paul tells his mom, and then goes back to Paige, and and Paige tells Sue from Maine, and Sue comes back to me and tells me that the New York Mets won the World Series. Now, that's why and I will explain that more next week. Ask yourself, what is the common solution? Paige, I got to get going, but I got to turn my camera off because I'll be walking. But this was so much fun. Thank you, everybody. I love you all. Pew, pew, pew.
Oh, love you too, Terry. Thank you. Pew pew pew. And I love the title of the chapter, because that's what we're talking about, a solution. And it says there is a solution, just one. And unfortunately, it might not have to do with the bets. Go Sports! I know I can see the faces of the Mets fans go, oh no. But that solution, that spiritual experience, one solution, and what is good about that is that if we have as many solutions as there are alcoholics or there are addicts, man, I don't know if they work. Do you know what I mean? And if you're somebody like me, I put down the bottle, I put down the pipe, I put down the pills, I break up with the ex, I put it down, I swear it off. Man, the clock starts ticking before I inevitably pick it up again. You see, sometimes we hear in the rooms, it's not a race. It's a race. I am racing the inevitability of the relapse. I put it down, I swear it off, and tick, 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 until the inevitability of the first one. So I don't have time to try 50 different solutions. And to be honest, before I get willing to do the 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it because it does, odds are I've tried almost every other solution that I can. You know what I mean? And I found that they do not work. But we've got this one solution, a spiritual awakening that happens as the result of the 12 steps. But I also find it equally as important to emphasize there is a solution. And I talk about that because it's important. There's a solution. If you're new here today, there is a solution. Now, if you have been in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out, and you feel that you are hopeless, you feel like you are a chronic relapser, you feel like, man, there is no way I could ever get this thing, there is a solution. And if you've been around this thing for a while, and maybe you got a little offended when I spoke about the old timer that's dry, you know what I mean? And maybe you're like, man, you don't understand. I got these problems piling up. And I don't think what you got, I don't think the steps is power. No, I don't think it could solve them. What I want you to know is there is a solution. We have an answer here. We have a way out, and it works. It works. We wouldn't be here if it did not work. We would not be as passionate about it if it did not work. There are a lot of things I am not passionate about. I don't regularly talk about lawn bowling. I mean, I can. I'm that weird. I might, but I don't got a passion for women's wrestling. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I don't have a passion for it. What I have a passion for is this, because when you have that enthusiasm, the word enthusiasm, it's Greek in origin, and essentially it means to be filled with God's Spirit. When I'm tapped into this power, when I have a relationship with this power, when I've been changed by this power, I can't help but be excited, enthusiastic about what is on offer. And it says we. Actually, you know what? We're right at the hour. Why don't we pick up at there is a solution next week? I was going to talk about the we. I'll talk about the we because I don't like to leave it mid thought. The we. Then I'll end on we because I hope it was fun. We. I truly believe when they first wrote this, the we was referencing the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But what I believe is the more of us that take this course of action, the more of us that follow the directions as outlined in this book, and the more of us that receive the promises that are promised to us in this book, the more of us are included in this we, so that we grows in numbers and power. Just as we saw on page 16, we get to be a part of the we as our experience matches the experience in this book. And so hopefully you'll join us next week when we'll kick it off with we, and I'll stop the recording. Awesome.